Good morning. Nice to have you on our coast, the right coast. So dovetailing off of the conversation we just had with Mark, I was excited to get to talk to you next because, you know, big legacy media company, traditional with roots and history like Time, et cetera, or even sort of what Vice is doing now with having an editorial slant and, you know, a very specific calendar and a brief. Extending that to create content for a brand that is just an extension of the existing content they're creating is one thing, but you're really trying to get brands to take a different kind of risk and investment. And you're telling them a slightly different story. So I would love for you to dive into some of that work that you're doing with them.
Yeah, look, the model that we've employed is different than the typical let's create content and have advertisers sponsor it, because the content in itself is so much different. We're talking about thousands of creators who are doing this started as passion projects. None of the creators that we work with started as companies who were then on a business model that said, okay, part of this means we're going to sell something to a consumer to buy, and then we're going to let an advertiser sponsor it. It was completely different than that, right? YouTube artists came up as passionate about a subject, and now we teach advertisers that connection that they've made with audiences is valuable. Mm-hmm. So that's a different model than traditional advertising has always been based on.
And I mean, that's sort of back in I think we met when you were at Blip, so, right? I mean, as you sort of have momentum and you have these storytellers around which you're aggregating the content to then build the audience, as they gain momentum and they gain audience, and then all of a sudden their business models do become part of the conversation. How do you manage and mitigate that many-to-many dynamic, right? Because that feels like that's even harder than managing an editorial desk.
Yeah, right. We don't have one voice. We've got 50,000 voices
that are distributed in different places
throughout the world, right? And they're going about their channels in different ways. Some folks have shows that they do 2-minute episodes 2 or 3 times a week. Some go for an hour. So there's all different types of formats, and the advertiser really has to embrace the personality. We do talk about context as much as audience, so the context and the content really matters. The advertisers don't look at us as a normal media outlet. They have to decide whether they're going to then embrace that talent and then have them become a spokesperson for them as well. So this is very much combining a bunch of different themes, because then we will create commercials for them as well as create branded content, so things run as destinations, but then we also take that message out in the form of media, pre-roll essentially, or putting different commercials together. So then it includes social as well. People are posting to their respective social media platforms on behalf of the brands related to the content that they're producing for the brands. So it's really, we're combining all of this together in something that has value to an audience and different than before.
So I know I keep going back to this with everybody, but when we spoke, I guess it was yesterday morning, and we did our brief, I had this sort of visual in my mind when we were conversing about brands, and, you know, I had this visual of like you and a brand, and you're rubbing the brand manager's head, telling them their brand story is really interesting and valuable, but, you know, they need to sort of embrace the audience, and i.e. of your content creators, you know, embrace how they tell a story to that audience, right? I mean, I am really curious, because maybe I'm just not good at soft words or semantics, but like that feels hard to me. Like that's what feels the hardest part about brand content, is that not everybody has the Coke story, right?
Right. Yeah, no, it could be, it's really hard, because the approval process that you sometimes go through with an advertiser, that's what takes the longest amount of time. And it's all about the individual. Some brands and some folks are very open to seeing what happens and letting it go in a certain direction. Others just absolutely, they say no to pretty much everything.
How much is your talent part of that process?
Oh, they're in the room. They
really?
Are there. Oh, yeah.
And do you think that changes the dynamic and makes you guys unique or interesting, that there's sort of that accessibility or approachability to the talent?
I hope so, because the thing that the brands have to, what they come to us for, and sometimes it's not a right fit, and you understand that, but they have to understand that the creators have an audience for a reason, and they speak in their voice, and if they don't speak in their voice, then the creator simply won't do it. Because in this economy, they're their own means of generating income. So if they get people to stop watching them, their income goes down.
Yep.
Daily. This is not something that has a catch-up effect. If less people watch that show tomorrow, they don't get money. So there's a very much there's a self-fulfilling prophecy to this, or there's a governor on this already from the creator, where they're not going to create something that's out of their voice, because they care more about their overall business. Exactly.
So,
than the rest of them.
But I mean, perception is a lot of this, right? And so what I'm wondering is there a perception with the brands that that you've done with whom you've done some great things? Is there a perception that they're more, especially maybe like the media guys in the room, that when the content creators in the room, that it's more of a collaborative process and they have a seat at the table, that they don't feel like it's a make it and take it kind of brand content play?
Right. Yeah, no, it's very much, it has to be collaborative, because the advertiser will, even if they agree on certain things, once the final cut comes, they could still say no.
Right.
And nobody wants to be in that situation, because then you're just wasting everyone's time and money.
So tell me some things that have worked. I mean, talk to me about some of the partnerships that have renewed, or what engages look like. I mean, it's very clear that you're sort of doing things cross-platform and it's going all over the place. But what are you really proud of?
Look, we take our collaborators, our creators, and our content. We put them on movie sets. We put them in front of they do the behind the scenes, and they take their fans through what happens when you're making this movie, and their fans eat that up, because they so care about what what goes into the finished product, not just watching the finished product. So that's a very successful precursor to launching a movie now. Shoulder content, derivative content, all of those different pieces are where we, in the entertainment industry, where that works. We do that for television and tune-in. For CPG clients, everybody wants to make something funny, right? They want to get people to laugh, and they want to have humor associated with it. Well, you have, if we've done some things with cleaning products, and you would say, well, that's, my goodness, how sexy could that be? But then you have a couple of million people who wind up watching something that was built just for that cleaning product. We do that for household, family products, and you create that. There's certainly not anything, you don't have to be funny all the time, you could be wholesome. And when you're seeing how this product helps a family get through their day, or they create something that's charming about that, well, then it works too.
How has being acquired by Disney, and you've been on this, I mean, you've been on a really interesting journey, right? So I hope you have every intention of writing a book someday. How has, especially when you're a Disney executive, how has this acquisition by Disney all of a sudden now, is there a presence at all that's sort of, there's awareness, but how has now being owned by a studio and the typical engagement model and monetization of product placement, right, versus sponsorship or branded content or native advertising, like what is that infused in the organization and the culture?
It's really, it's put a spark into everything we do. There's such a natural alignment, not just, almost in every facet of our business. So from content creation, I talked about the shoulder and derivative content. We're in a huge movie production company now. All of those stories are going to be told in the 90-minute to 2.5-hour fashion when the movie comes out. Well, there's dozens of other stories that you can attach onto that. We did something with Maleficent, for example, just as we were becoming part of the same company, where we had one of our makeup artists show her audience how to become Maleficent, how to get Angelina Jolie's look. And that gets a very large audience. Disney didn't have that before joining with Maker. So you
brought them kind of authenticity in some ways.
We've got folks who bring these things to life, as we like to say. The activation of these premises and these stories have really allowed us to go much deeper. The tune-in for broadcast shows, whether it's going to be something ABC or ESPN or ABC Family. There's so many different ways to bring these characters out to have them exposed to more people, because we have folks all around the world who are talking about this content every day.
Right.
So there's so many different lines of business now that are charged up that we're now part of the world's largest media company.
Who do you, just as sort of the roster of, because you have thousands, right? You have a ton of content creators, but your roster, like what are, besides, the collaborative kind of desire to work with a brand, but just what type of content creator in today's world of sort of, this democratization of content where it used to be so cost prohibitive and now great storytelling is done in the bedrooms of youth, right? Yeah. What type of an independent content creator is really do you think sort of helping you guys from a business perspective?
Let's look at the most basic. Let's look at the largest YouTuber in the world, the most subscribed YouTuber in the world. His name is PewDiePie. He is now such a business in his own right, and we work with him across many different facets. Of all the media companies in the world and all of the strategic planning departments who come up with business plans and ideas that go for every different line of business they can imagine, not one of them ever came up with the idea of thinking about having somebody video themselves playing a video game.
Yeah.
He has 28 million subscribers now.
It's unreal.
You can't, so all the planning, it is unreal.
Yeah.
All the planning that you take and all the things that everyone's been doing for the past 75 years, should we create, I worked at a fairly big media company, a couple of them in my past. The New York Times once did a study on including gloves with the paper every day because people were so tired of getting the ink on their hands.
Yeah.
So one of the business plans was, how do we put gloves in each subscribed copy that goes at home? The level of depth that's gone into planning, strategic planning, media companies is something beyond anyone. If you haven't worked in a big company, you don't know. But yet now this huge, and now of course we're validated by the Disney purchase, and all of the other companies out there doing what we do, this had never been thought of. And now you have all of these media companies buying in to ownership positions or investment positions in new companies that are doing this new media economy. Never happened before.